Buongiorno for participants who are on the eastern coast, and good afternoon for those who are on the old continent. My name is Laszlo Bruszt. I'm the co-director of the Central European University's Democracy Institute. DI, or Democracy Institute, is a research institute founded by the first university in exile within the European Union. It deals with the study of the decline and eventual revival of democracy. It's a small institute. We have around 20 researchers in different positions, but we have dozens and dozens of projects in which more than 100 people participate around Europe and actually to growing extents also around the world. And we have now the first cohort of our doctoral and postdoctoral fellows, and hopefully we will run also a new project that brings in fellows from 4 continents. We study democracy from many different angles, disciplinary angles. We have among our scholars, medievalists, historians, lawyers, sociologists, political scientists, students of network sciences, and so on. Now, the host of today's event is the flagship initiative of the Democracy Institute, the Review of Democracy, or as we call it, RevDem. RevDem is an online platform for publicizing and discussing issues linked to the revival and or eventual decline of democracies. It raises in various forms issues linked to this topic in podcasts, in interviews, in debates, and it organizes a large number of very important debates and dialogue on topics. Organizes a large number of something happened with the echoes. I think what I say is not so relevant that it should be repeated.
No. It's
okay. So on issues that are really topical for the fate of democracy, both at national and transnational level, and the Italian elections and the aftermath of this election is exactly such an event. So it's highly relevant both for the Italians, but also for Europeans in general, and it has repercussions also at the global level. So I would like to really heartfully thank for the panelists of today's discussion. Thanks a lot for coming and enlightening us on issues linked to these elections. I would like to thank the editors of the Review of Democracy for organizing this event, and immediately pass the floor over to Michal Matlak, who will moderate today's conversation.
Thank you very much, Laszlo. And let me very briefly present our panelists. They are very well known to the viewers and readers of Review of Democracy, so long introductions are not needed. Let me start alphabetically from Sergio Fabbrini, who is Dean of the Political Science Department and Director of the Master in International Public Affairs and Professor of Political Science and International Relations at Luis Guido Carli in Rome. Welcome, Professor. We have with us Nausica Palazzo, who is an assistant professor in constitutional law at Nova School of Law in Lisbon. And we have with us Professor Nadia Urbinati, who is Kyriakos Tsakopoulos Professor of Political Theory at Columbia University. So let me jump to the first question, as we wouldn't like to speak for longer than an hour. And I would also mention that if there are questions, please ask them in the chat, and we'll try to address these questions at the end of our debate. Let me start from the first question about the reasons for the success of the far right in Italy. Do you think that it's more the question of the electoral system, as some write, and also the decision of the Partito Democratico and the Five Star Movement not to cooperate as a coalition, or is it a broader political process, or perhaps even a cultural shift within the country? If I may start from Sergio Fabbrini.
First, thanks for the invitation. Happy to be here to see old friends as Laszlo. So I just give you some, let's say, small insights. The first one is Italy, more than the Italian political system, more than other European political system, is a sort of floating world politics. You know, you have the impression this Japanese art in which there is the floating world, and Italy is something like that. We had the up and down of political leader in the last period. Mr. Renzi got 40% in the European election, now is roughly around 88%. The Five-Star Movement arrived to 33%, now is just half of that number. And Salvini was the winner of the last European parliamentary election, and now is on the margin of the Italian politics. So you have this continuous transformation of the political sphere, and it's difficult to say why that happened. Probably because we don't have any more political parties. We have personal organization, and there is a level of research or search of novelty in the electorate, which is astonishing. The second point goes immediately is that there is in this situation of floating world politics, you have very contradictory behavior. Miss Meloni, she's not married, so I have to call her Miss Meloni. She defends the value of the family, but she's not married, and she has a daughter outside of the formal marriage. You know, this strange situation of people who want to lecture us as to behave, and at the same time they behave in a very completely different way from what they say. In any way, Miss Meloni moved from 3% in the last election to 26%. So it's absolutely unrealistic to think that you are facing some significant cultural change. Yeah, you have an area of center-right or right-center, and the leader representing that area might change continuously. So I would say that we are not facing a cultural change in the country, or what in the past was called a realignment, social blocks, or transformation of the cleavage. We are more on the situation of a transition from the old established political parties coming out from the Second World War, and we are not yet in another political equilibrium, and you have very several cleavages, certainly between left and right, but also between pro-Europe and against Europe, between pro-US and against US. You have many, many cleavages that did not find, or have not yet found, an equilibrium. So I will bet on a situation of permanent turmoil, as yesterday emerged clearly with the election of the president of the Italian Senate, where the coalition winning the election collapsed the very first day of the new legislature. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you very much. And let me now move to Nausica Palazzo.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the lovely invitation. So I don't have special insights about this question, so it's just a personal opinion, but I feel like I want to agree with what Professor Fabbrini just said, that it's not such a radical cultural shift that's happening in the country, but it's basically a constituency, an electorate that is looking for an identity and is moving around. I was reading the voting patterns, and it's basically the same people moving around: Lega, Movimento 5 Stelle, and Fratelli d'Italia. And also it's an electorate that has a very specific profile according to this survey, and mostly people in economic hardship. So it was somehow, I think, inevitable to have this reaction in a situation in which Italy has been hit very, very severely, even more than other countries. That's my perception, by the economic crisis, to have, again, Giorgia Meloni winning this election with a landslide.
Thank you very much. And let me now give the floor to Nadia Urbinati.
Yeah, of course, I thank you also a lot for this invitation. And also I thank Sergio Fabbrini, because he opened the floor in a very precise way that there is almost nothing to be added. So I'm trying to add something that goes in agreement with that. It's not. Since politics is more a question of personality or publicity than a question of ideological alignments or cleavages that are very connected to parties, structured parties. Now, how these preferences for Meloni versus somebody else is structured, is mobilized. Since there is no strong ideological difference, there are no strong ideological difference. I think an element that an element that becomes more relevant is precisely that one that has to do with ethical culture of the country, you would say. I mean, issues connected to gender or connected to way of living, as you mentioned, or connected to traditions, becomes more relevant, because this is the only cultural basis that unifies. Culturally means, in this case, socio-ethnical culture that we have. So thus, issues of family, traditional family, issues of traditional roles of women, these are parts of our tradition. Of course, there was modernity, rights, we changed many things, but this bottom of traditionalism was there all the time. So for this reason, we have many problems in having women in politics, or women inside of corporations at a high level, or issues of equal or quasi-proportional salary between men and women. So these issues are there, and now they are object of political propaganda. And so Meloni or Salvini, they don't have much specific right-wing, traditional fascist or not specificity, but they use these elements, as they use the as element of anti-immigration, of course, but this is not unique to them in Europe. So for this reason, on the one hand is a floating, phenomenon, the one of changing leadership or changing preferences from the electorate. But on the other hand, this time they had these leaders who won. They were able to, entrench themselves more inside of this national cultural background. And so the question to us is this national background truly strong, capable of supporting them through time, or is simply a contingent moment connected to many other dissatisfactions, social or whatever? That needs to be seen.
Thank you very much. You mentioned gender as one of the important issues of this campaign, and that's precisely what I wanted to ask now. I want to ask about the role of gender and also the LGBT related issues in the electoral campaign. Also about the possible policies of the new government in these areas. If I may also ask about the kind of illiberalism of the parties that won with respect to these questions, and also how they are, how we could relate their views on both LGBT and gender-related issues if we compare them with other similar parties in other parts of Europe? I know that it's a kind of a complex question, but a very important one as well, I guess. If I may now turn to Nausica Palazzo, and then we will come back to Nadia Urbinati, if that's possible.
Good.
Okay, so I was really happy about the invitation because it gave me an opportunity to dig into their electoral programs. And I was really pleasantly surprised because I found out that on the one side, we have this strong symbolic emphasis on the family that Nadia was talking about, which is stunning. It's stunning because the family comes on top of Giorgia priorities before even anti-immigration. It comes even before rediscussing the National Resilience Recovery Plan. So it's the issue with which she's presenting herself to the outer world. So on the one hand, this was pretty much more stunning than I was expecting. On the other hand, I was pleasantly surprised by her moderate approach in the program, because if we read the section, of course, there is an emphasis on the natural family, which is a bit of a leitmotif of all these self-proclaimed liberal countries like Hungary and Poland. So the idea that we should replace the individual with the family as the natural unit, the fundamental unit of society. But on the other hand, she's being very cautious in her program, and she's for instance, in her entry on dignity, she's saying that she's not going to abolish same-sex civil unions, and that she's going to actually fight discrimination against people based on sexual choice, not sexual orientation, but sexual and sentimental choice. So she's kind of trying to hold these various dimensions together. On the one hand, signaling that the family is the sort of fundamental unit in society, but on the other hand, sort of pleasing a more moderate constituency, saying that we're not going to abolish same-sex unions, we're not going to persecute same-sex LGBTQ populations. But I feel like the coalition now is at the crossroads of two very different routes, because if this is her sort of moderate, what Marie-Louise Frick would call moderate communitarianism, in which there is an asymmetrical balancing of rights and LGBTQ populations can exist. They cannot prevail over common goods, but they can exist to the extent that that's compatible with this sort of communitarian view. But the other route which could be taken is a much more radical one, where there's no space whatsoever for people that do not fit majoritarian conceptions of the true people, the authentic citizens. And I'm sorry, but I was very concerned by the recent election of Fontana as head of the chamber. This happened 1 hour ago. And Fontana is a well-known exponent of this second, more radical view, because he's the person who, once he was the Ministry for the Family, was sponsoring the World Congress of Family. And we know that the World Congress of Family is against abortion, is completely conceptually against abortion, is against LGBTQ populations as subjectivities, because these represent this sort of predominance of this in this sort of spoiled modern individualism. And they were, again, putting fetuses on the seats of the Congress of Families in Verona to say how much against they were, against these issues. And the World Congress of Family is, first of all, it's a US organization that's been sponsored by radical right Christian conservative movements, and that has within itself organizations like Pro-Vita, pro-life organization, including the Russian Orthodox Church, that are extremely radical, and has been doing a pretty aggressive international propaganda to sort of introduce laws against LGBTQ people. But what I wanted to say, long story short, is that now the ruling coalition has to decide on which side to stand. Because if on the one side, Giorgia Meloni is trying to appear as a more sort of reassuring person who's not going to destroy LGBTQ populations as such, who's not going to abolish the right to abortion as such. On the other hand, we have a fellow party members that are in favor of these issues. And we have now a very important public office, the president of the Chamber of Deputies, that has publicly stated these things and publicly held this position. So I'm very much looking forward to see what's coming next.
Thank you so much. And if I may give the floor to Nadia.
Yeah, I am less convinced of approaching Meloni from the point of view of sincerity. This has nothing to do with politics, not only because Machiavelli told us that we should understand judging politicians not according to what they say, but according to what they say in order to do something that is not necessarily in agreement with what they say. So Meloni said these things, and she was able to even have support from women, both because they didn't go to vote, many of leftist women that I know, many my friends of mine, or because they voted for her, betting on this, first woman being a prime minister. So it wouldn't go so far on sincerity. So that was an important strategic move, and we see now how she behaves. Because the way in which she managed the election of both the chair of the Senate and the House is very interesting, because it shows her, radical capability of doing politics well and doing what she wants. I mean, she wanted that Fontana was there. That was not imposed on her, and thus she made the choice that is in agreement, perfectly in agreement with what she thinks or she wants. So let's distinguish between propaganda and policies or visions. And I like also at this point to add another thing. To think that the moderation comes from accepting families homosexual kind of relations, family-like, well, as we know very well, this is not necessarily a sign of radicalism or liberalism. Transformation of sexual choice into family is a way of making more traditional even the non-traditional, and so to be able to give the sense of the organic unity of society around family. So it's an important way of moderating or taming the radicality of rights of free choice in sexual orientation. So she doesn't insist on sexual orientations, but on unions, that is, forms of life together. This is very interesting because it's not the same thing. Anyway, I would wait and see, of course, but and like on the question of other issues concerning abortion, because in Italy, as we know, we don't have the right to free choice on abortion. We have a law, number 194, regulating the interruption of pregnancy in relation to freedom of choice and health issues, but after discussing with a medical doctor or a psychologist, so it's not simply your choice. And so within this situation, within this description of the right to have an abortion, she can, of course, find herself at home, also because she can, as his party, her party did in several regions, in the regions in the party rules, they can insist more on the conscious objection by the doctors and the health officers in order to make the choice of abortion more difficult. So they have many strategies, and it's not enough, it's not necessary to go against a law to depower, take away power from them.
Thank you very much. Nadia, would you like to respond to that, to these remarks, or shall we move?
I appreciated the point about abortion. I think that also shows how much propaganda there is, because the immediate reaction the day after she was elected of the region of Piemonte was to present a bill to fund pro-life organization to enter abortion clinics, and they put 400,000 euros into this. So this is going to be the strategy from now on, to really apply, that's what she said, really apply the law, because the law per se is quite conservative. It allows these organizations to sort of help the woman carry out the pregnancy, because the idea is that the woman cannot complete the pregnancy for some kind of hardship that she has. It's not an individual based understanding of reproductive choice. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. And if I now may move to another question. So the question of the neo-fascism, and that's how the party of Giorgia Meloni is being described. It was mentioned here already, and I want to ask you, what does it mean? Whether you think that's the right expression, because it means a lot, I'd say. And if you think that's the best description of Giorgia Meloni's party. If you could start with Sergio Fabbrini.
I think that, of course, Giorgia Meloni and the people constituting the elite, the leadership group of Brother of Italy, come from the fascist tradition. They always claim to be the heir of that tradition, and they were formed, trained to the value and the practices of the tradition. So this is crucial. Not, I mean, I would say, for making clear the two plausible options, let's say two plausible, let's say, outcome of this election. One outcome of this election is very inward-looking. I would say the inward-looking interpretation, or the inward-looking development. I followed the speech given by the new president of the Senate yesterday, and the speech was completely devoted to close the civil war opened in Italy in September 8, 1943. 8 years later, we try to integrate in the constitutional pact that component of the Italian political elite or civil society, which was on the other side, which was with the fascist experience of the social republic of Laszlo. So in this case, the government would be a very, let's say, an experience of internal, I don't say conversation, of internal solution. First, we integrated the communists, but of course the communists were instrumental in promoting resistance to fascism, in writing the constitution. Now is the time to integrate in the constitutional pact the fascists. It's probable, it's plausible, I would say, that this is the, let's say, the outcome of this election. It's a national self-conscious, let's say, operation. But of course, the world is completely changing. It's completely changed. And there is another world over there. And indeed, there was never the word Europe in the speech by the new president of the Senate. For him, there is no something called the larger European world, where we enter since at least 1950 with the Schuman Declaration. So here, one option is, okay, we will become a secondary, tertiary actor in Europe, but we probably have the chance to solve what was open with the September 8, 1943 civil war in the country. Of course, there is another plausible interpretation, that the reality around Italy and the reality of the interdependence, integration, example is energy, the energy issue, or the war in Ukraine, will push for taking position, for having, let's say, a clear standing in some way. That would be very complicated because this ruling elite does not have a culture, does not have a training, does not have a formation, education for understanding those issues. And there are dilemmas facing them that it doesn't seem to me now, so far, they are able to deal with. For example, what is the relation between Atlanticism and Europeanism, right? So for the very first time in Italy, we discovered that you should, or you might be Atlanticist and at the same time anti-Europeanist, which is the experience of the Polish party, law and right and law, but also the experience of the Tory in Britain, the fundamental groups within the European conservative. But both the Polish and the Brits do not belong to the Eurozone. The Brits, of course, now no longer belong also to the European Union. In any case, they are outside. They were culturally and materially outside the Eurozone. How is it possible to be anti-Europeanist as a country that is part of the Eurozone, where you have to negotiate positively, not to criticize negatively, in order to have, for example, a stability and growth pact more congenial with your growth model, or you have to deal with very important issues like the banking union and so forth. So yeah, you have a huge, very important question that I don't know if they are able to solve. Another question, just for making clear, I don't want to occupy too much time, and Laszlo know that because I was invited to speak about this issue in Budapest, is that certainly Meloni, like Le Pen, like Wilders, like Orbán, like Kaczynski, accept the idea that there is no life outside of the European Union. The cost that the Brits paid in political, economic, social, cultural terms, and probably in territorial terms, you see the Scots ask for a referendum without, waiting for the decision by the Judiciary Committee of the House of Lords. Well, the costs were so high in the case of Britain that nobody, even Le Pen, can think to leave the European Union. And so they try to make nationalism an endogenous element of the European Union or the European integration. It's the endogenization of nationalism. But that is easy to say, but then it's much more complicated to transform in a policy platform. And so, yeah, I don't know what that means. I invented with other colleagues, I was not the only one, but this concept of sovereignty in order to understand post-2016 nationalism. We don't know exactly how to call this phenomenon. They want to be in and they want to be sovereign. So in a way, this strange situation. What does it mean for Italy? We just received roughly 200 billion euro for recovery and resilience of the country in the post-pandemic period. Is it possible to be sovereignist in a situation in which you depend so much on the interdependence, cooperation, trust, negotiation capacity at the Brussels level? So I say just few elements, but I might raise the issue of the Stability and Growth Pact. Is another example of that. It's possible to reformulate the Stability and Growth Pact without creating a powerful coalition, which at least France should be there. At least France should be there, or at least a component of the Scholz government should be there, like the Green and probably a part of the Social Democrats. So in this situation, my impression is that they will talk about those issues that Nausica and Nadia raised. They will try to push the attention on those civil rights, human rights, and something like that. I don't know the word that they will find out, in order to cover, to hide the difficulty in dealing with the real issue, the real content of politics. At the same time, they will try, if it's, if the process is positive, at least I hope they will conclude this long civil war started in September 1943.
Thank you so much. If I now could ask Nadia Urbinati a similar question, adding the question that she worked extensively on, that is populism. Is there a chance you could somehow try to define for us the kind of populism represented by the new governing coalition?
Well, I like to follow Sergio Fabbrini, because he said exactly what what needs to be said now. First, the post-Brexit phenomenon. It's not pre-Brexit here. It's the right wing out after the deluge, because from that moment on, they change, and also Meloni, this is clear, and also the same Salvini, who is the most sovereignist of the two, they change the attitude toward Europe. Of course, they transform the attitude into a kind of it's like in a union when you want to bargain something, and so they want to have a bargain kind of approach with Brussels in the name of the interest of the mother nation, in the name of sovereignism, as you said. And even they propose, some very crazy people, they propose even the change of the constitution to introduce the value of sovereignism inside the constitution, which is untranslatable from a legal and juridical point of view, by the way. So post-Brexit, this implies perhaps that many of them, and this starts also with Bannon and the international right-wing movement, to give Europe a new meaning, the meaning of, to transform Europe in a project of nationalization of the meaning of Europe, to give Europe what they are now giving to their own respective nations, so the same kind of exclusionary, identity-based, and so on and so forth. But this is is a kind of ideology. De facto, it seems to me that the only reason we shouldn't too much worried about this government or this majority, it is because of the external constraints. The external constraints on them from the PNRR, I mean the European money coming through Europe, that they imply a lot of regulation, a lot of constraints, and a lot of responsibilities, legal and financial, not only political. And these external constraints, they count. They are relevant, not in spite of themselves. And the second reason is the international. So from the economic point of view, they cannot do much, perhaps. And from the international point of view, they cannot do much because the politics in relation to war, in relation to Europe, is led by the NATO and the Atlantic Alliance and Europe somehow. So the nation state can do not much. So since they have nothing, almost nothing to say on that international level or the external, they will insist very much on internal issues, on domestic issues. I agree with you. Domestic issues also in terms of more, authoritarian forms of intervention on freedom, the question of the South and how to solve the unemployment, and thus we call in Italy the income citizenship, which is very wrong because it's not an income citizenship according to the principles we know and the theory we know, but they call it, meaning it's a kind of support for those who have no job and so on and so forth. She campaigned against that, but I doubt she can do something because after all, audience is important for her, for all politicians. So the South almost would be lost, and thus would become a truly oppositional against her. So even there, I think she cannot be radical. So at the end, what is important to stress is that if there is nothing dangerous to be afraid of, it is because we are very interconnected with other nations. It is because there is Europe, and it's because, so it is external, not because of inward, domestic, or which, if possible, if these were possible, they would be fascist as they are. I mean, according to their own culture and their tradition. Although, of course, you know, history changes, perhaps, but not very much in some sense. But this externality has for me a kind of, you know, safe net for us.
But somehow could argue that, for example, countries like Hungary are also internationally connected very strongly, and still it didn't stop Orban from doing his.
But they start in a different way. They start in a different way, the relationship with the EU. You know, they started not at the beginning, but they already bargained their opposition in the moment they started. So they started already as a very nationalistic position, dealing with Europe. That was not the case of Italy. Not even the position of Italy in Europe is the same. We are in.
And then the fact that we are in the economic and monetary union, contrary to Europe. And this is, you know, an old question that, of course, those vincolo esterno, as the Italian used to say, external constraint, sometimes create reaction, popular reaction, because it seems that we do reform because we are asked to do reform. But in this case, as Nadia said, is also is a safety net. If you want to stay within the common currency, and Italy, you can imagine what does it mean to leave the euro for an economy which is highly integrated, in particular in the area where Fratelli d'Italia and the League are strong, in the central north, highly integrated with the German, with the Bavarian economy. To leave Europe would be a disaster. So that social constituency for remaining the euro and be part of the euro play also a role of internal constraint on the new majority. So they have a constraint coming from Brussels, but also they have a constraint coming from Padua, from Verona, from Vicenza, and they are there because they need to have a common currency in order to contribute to the European single market.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And speaking of the single market, I wanted to move to the policies of the possible new government, and here I wanted to ask you about especially about two aspects of these policies. One is the economic policy, meaning whether you think that it will be more neoliberal, let's say, or not really, and then I want to ask you about the policies of the new government when it comes to judiciary. That's already mentioned, and here we have also a question from our editor Oliver Garner, who wanted to ask you whether you think that they will take interest in the Constitutional Court as it happened in Poland after 2015. Whether you think that this kind of policy is likely. I don't know who would like to start, Nadia or Sergio?
I think Nausica has a good argument on the judiciary. We should ask first, perhaps.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Do I?
Absolutely.
Yes. So I was trying to Google when are we going to elect new members of the Constitutional Court, but I think that our institutions are a bit more solid. So I wouldn't be concerned about that kind of, let's say, bent of liberalism in taking up institutions for some reasons. But I hope that Nadia and Sergio also agree. I think they're more gonna sort of focus on the civil rights issues because they're easier. They're easier in a way. They're much more easily understandable, easily pursued. and they allow them to, again, keep all these dimensions together. So I was thinking about their foreign policies, for instance. Are they friends or enemies to Orban? It's a very, or to Russia, it's a very embarrassing friend right now, Russia. But they've been traditionally inclined to praise Putin for what he has done. So let's say in terms of foreign policy, they're taking a distance, but then now again, when it comes to civil rights, they're winking to Putin in many ways. I would be optimistic, but I tend to be naive that they're not going to attack institutions.
Thank you.
Can I join?
Of course.
Yes, I agree with Nausica, and I think that it will be difficult for them to do what Orban or Kaczynski did in Hungary and Poland. We have, let's say, the experience of fascism in the past, but also the long consolidation of democracy would make that kind of transformation more difficult. But nevertheless, there are people who think to do that. I think, for example, that the decision to elect as a president of the Constitutional Court, I think the proposal comes from Giuliana Amato, a woman very well known for her pro-EU position, linked to the labor movement in a way, was also, let's say, an element that in some way might make clear that the Constitutional Court doesn't want to change direction, but there will be debate over there. Regarding the economic policy, this coalition is all but neoliberal. Here we are facing people with a very strong statist view of democracy, and that is another element of capitalism. This is an element of the relation between market and democracy that should be at least analyzed and supervised. Meloni comes from a statist position, protectionist. That kind of right in Italy, as in France, does not believe in the market. She represents also a constituency traditionally. Now she's moving on the north, but traditionally a very Rome-centric constituency, ministry, rentier, like taxi driver, so those who do not like to enter in the market. And Berlusconi is another example of somebody who does not like market. He is an oligopolist or a monopolist. In any case, he is a family that want to control his own business and not open the business to competition. Not to talk about Salvini. Salvini is the representative of small merchants who live basically on protecting local markets. So we are facing an old-fashioned view of right-wing economic culture. How does that, let's say, conciliate or fit with the social market economy of the European Union? That is an open question. Take an example of liberalization. They are the protector of taxi drivers. They are the protector of those who run along the Italian wonderful shore, what we call stabilimenti balneari. And so, at the same time, the Italian resilience recovery plan requires the opening of those closed markets. And how do they behave? It would be very interesting. I wouldn't. Okay, so I think that.
I think, may I join him?
Sure.
Of course.
Because on this issue, Meloni or the coalition was able to win support from outside the right wing. Many people in Italy are in favor of protecting against, international or global corporations coming to make business to Italy. So this is also in the left that there is this position. So they were able to conglomerate different positions around this protection, which for them is a protection of interests of their own electorates. For the other is a protections of what? Against protection against the so-called international globalization, as they say. So they are together in this, and for this reason they received large support. Perhaps the only topics in which they are more friendly to the so-called neoliberal, I don't know what I mean, neoliberal, but assume what this word. It's on the pension system. They are very more on, but I can make a mistake because it's very hard to understand what they're going. And on the income citizenship, so-called, the right to give, call it income citizen, the support. On this, both of them that are in favor of demobilizing the state to give, to be present in these two sectors. But again, I don't know how far they can go, because many people are willing to use these helps, and this can help also to have a more market mobility, or people can spend money if they have money. So there are different objections on how to intervene on these two important issues of pensions and I don't know whether they want to open a conflictual relationship with the Italians now. They perhaps they are going to wait for a while. I don't know.
Thank you very much. And if I may move now to the last question and link this question also to the questions from the audience, I wanted to ask about the kind of the impact of the results of the elections on the European Union. Whether you think that the new government will influence strongly the rule of law policy on the European level, also its foreign policy. We discussed it briefly, and then the question of enlargement, and possibly also the institutional setup of the EU that is linked to the enlargement. So all these debates on the abolition of the EU unanimity, for example, whether Italy here will change the situation. And I wanted to link it to the question from the audience about the meaning of the far right winning in the old Europe, so to say. If you think that it will change significantly the debate, the kind of the discussions on the European Council level, if you think that it's a big change on the European level.
Can I start?
Of course.
Yes, certainly it will change a lot, because the organization that the European Union has developed based on the role of the European Council, on which I try desperately to explain the danger to have an organization organized based on this kind of intergovernmental diplomatic entity. The European Union is so European Council based that everything is decided there, especially the most important policy. And the principle of unanimity organizing the procedure, the issue-making procedure in the European Council, makes the European Council exposed to division or threat which are not congruent with democratic principle. Okay, so traditionally, when I go to Brussels, I go to Berlin, and I go to Paris, I explain this point. They say, but the European Council is based on trade-off, bargain, negotiation. We find it's a consensus logic institution, but that implies an old idea of the European Union, when basically the founding member states share, probably not the ever closer union, but they share the need to stay together. With enlargement of the 1990s and 2000s, and now with the development of, I call sovereignist in Italy, and probably tomorrow in France, these prime minister and president go to the European Council will block completely the work of that institution, with dramatic implication for the European Union. And now we have the experience of that. I think we have to follow clearly, because if Meloni will be successful you can be sure that the next French election will bring a Meloni type president to the country. Okay, it might be Le Pen, but probably somebody else, but we are going that direction. This is why union of asymmetrical states should have a multilateral decision-making system, not centralized decision-making system in one single institution. Anyway, this is the fight that scholars like me do, but and they fail continuously, which is part of our probably mission. Anyway, so this is the first point. The second question is that she will make, if she follow, probably, you might change along the road like St. Paul, but I don't know if she's a St. Paul, but if she follow what she said, and I study her very closely in the last 10 years, if she follow what she said, she will be an element of politicization of the European Council. And that means she will not defend rule of law derogation or democratic backsliding in abstract terms. What she will defend is the right of each member state to define its own constitutional principle. And again, there is another element, the so-called constitutional pluralism that Laszlo knows very well because it was very well known at the UI in Fiesole, that some of us criticize. On behalf of constitutional pluralism, we probably have the right to not to respect those minorities, those sexual preferences, and so forth. She will not be the dictator, but she will be the nationalist, which allow the dictatorship or the democratic backsliding to happen. So in that sense, we are facing with a much more, let's say, slippery situation. And here again is the transformation of the European Union from a supranational project in a kind of intergovernmental, inter-nation state organization. And that is the Europe of nations, which is taking shape. And to the other end, the Europeanists are too much, let's say, backward looking. They are not able to deal with this new challenge and their division. Think about the difficulty by the German government first to say, we are responsible for this energy crisis because we rely completely on Russia. They never said that clearly. The mistake made by Angela Merkel, for example. And second, they have difficulty in accepting another mutualization of debt for dealing with the cost of the energy, as it happened with the pandemic. So there are let's say, German inward, Germany first, let's say, view in the German ruling elite, which are part of that discussion. At the same time, France is, I read the long speech given by Macron on September 1st to the French diplomatic body. It's always a stronger France is a condition for a stronger Europe, a stronger France for a stronger Europe. Europe is not the sum of its member states. It should be that plus something else. In that sense, Europeanists should be at least waking up a little bit.
I guess they are waking up. Just a short footnote before I give the floor to Nadia Nausica to finish our debate. It's a question from a friend of Review of Democracy and a postdoc at Louis, Tomasz Woźniakowski, regarding the commission's milestones. Do you think that the new government will meet the conditions and get the recovery fund for Italy?
Hi, Thomas. Okay, we will have. I will enter in the detail the next time that we meet in the corridor of the department. Anyway, so I think that they will try to do that. There is no, as Nadia said before, there is no rationale for giving up to those funds. There are people that are waiting for those funds. So I think they will try to do that. They will change on the margin. Not the basic project. Instead of to build, let's say, an important cultural center with those funds, they will create some sport facility because they believe in in the body, of the strength of the body instead of the strength of the mind. Anyway, but there are elements on the margin. I don't see now so far the possibility for interrupting the funds.
Of course, thank you very much. And if I may now give the floor to Nausica and then to Nadia to finish our discussion.
Yeah, no, but very briefly, I think it's a bit of a depressing moment for Europe because there was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of excitement around what I felt was a unique way to reach a sort of a federal, quasi-federal state, meaning two gigantic crises, the COVID, the gas crisis, the energy crisis, and a clear classic demonstration that Europe is the only safety net that the single European states have to tackle these challenges. So even though in the mind of the founders, we were already thinking about a federation, we know that things went differently. And it wasn't a federation, and it is still very far from being such. And now it seemed like there was a little bit of excitement, and Draghi has been actually very central, his role in pushing for rediscussing decision-making procedures, to have to replace unanimity in places where the EU is deciding still by unanimity because it's more sensitive, or enlarging Europe further. So we were sort of seeing this push towards a more integrated union. I think this is it's going to be a very serious setback because without Italy, with Italy potentially siding with sovereign nationalistic states, I don't see, to be honest, another unique historic circumstance that will give impetus to the EU, not at least in the near future.
Thank you very much. Some hope that it might be still the war in Ukraine, that it might give this
yeah, that is. So there is a line that friends of mine use in the States to talk about the fascism or the movements here, the right-wing radical, is confederalization. So in Europe is this question, confederalization versus federalism, or the transformation of Europe into, as Sergio or Nausica said, is a kind of bargaining relations between sovereign states that use their help one another when they have to solve some specific problems. This is and this is terrible because as it is, the veto, the power of the veto, it's not only anti-democratic, but is a way to give unproportional power to those who have no power. So, and this is we know already that. Now, in my view, though, where else? So here we have two crises, and the crisis connected to war, to Ukraine. You know, I think that the pandemic, the COVID, had a good chance to unite, because after all, all countries were in some sense equally hit by it, and without any, but the question of economic is different, because countries are different in terms of economic strength and economic exigencies and relationship with other countries. So it's not equalizing, it's disequalizing the relationship in relation to Europe. So you have a strong opinion or strong nationalism coming back in Germany, which can find good ally with people like Meloni, because they are talking the same language, although within different ideological frames. So paradoxically, this war, and I think Putin has this idea in mind, and he's very happy to see how he's succeeding in dismantling or transforming the European Union into a club of very unfriendly friends. This is what he wanted, and the war, he is going to, risk to be used in this way in Europe. I'm very skeptical about the possibility of redressing Europe toward the more federalistic path, and instead we have to contain as much as we can, but I don't know how, since we have this Melonization of many other countries to contain this confederalization of Europe, and this is dangerous for me. Yeah.
Thank you so much. thank you to all the panelists. I think it was a fascinating discussion, not only for me, but also for our viewers. The debate is of course available on Facebook, and it will be also available on YouTube. We will also prepare a short summary of this discussion. Once again, thank you so much for this stellar panel. I don't know if Laszlo would like to comment at the end, or if we should.
Thank you so much. I think we went over 1 hour, but I would like to just say that it was fascinating. Lots of very interesting topics still. This is a moving target, but to me, it was really giving lots of food for thought. So thank you so much.